Picture this. You are a Path of Exile mob, minding your own business, digging up scrap from the ground or eating some dirty garbage, who knows. Then, out of nowhere, an explosion rattles your eardrums. You see fire spewing into the sky in the distance. In an instant, the air around you vaporizes, cremating your skin as fast as you can say, "Oh no, Discharge is back." Welcome, it's your friendly neighborhood Badger here, back with my league starter for Scourge. Rising from the ashes of my content hell, Discharge is rearing its ugly head to show its power once more in a new, tankier, more stylish form. With all of the changes to Ignite in 3.16, wrapping your head around how to scale those burns is a bit confusing, but this guide should give you all the answers to the questions you have. We will be taking this guide in steps, starting from super budget, league start, Armabrand into transitioning to Discharge, then focusing on the endgame scaling of this mighty skill. My last Discharger had a bit of a problem with defense, but the tree this time around makes you a lot tankier with so much more all Ellie res, armor, and life. And respectable DPS as well. 2 million on a super budget setup, scaling to anywhere from 10 million to 15 million Ignite DPS in the endgame, with some big boy investing. We'll be covering all bases, starting from budget gear and links to endgame, then checking out the new passive trees with the new mastery system, and finishing off with how to level this pyromaniac. First off, however, we will talk about how the build functions, how to generate charges, and the new flame surge mechanics. Disclaimer, to play Discharge, the build requires Voll's Devotion. It is a unique amulet that can potentially get expensive if too many of you decide to play this build. Player beware. And if you enjoy the content, remember, a sub is only a click away and it's much appreciated. But let's get into it. Alright, so the first thing that I want to talk about on this Discharge build is how the rotations work with the build. Now, I am going to talk about all of the budget options and everything like this, and you will be leveling with Armabrand if you're going to be playing this on League Start, but you're just going to be leveling until you get a Voll's Devotion and a Ramirez Banquet. Ramirez Banquet is going to be super easy to get. Voll's Devotion might be a little bit more expensive, depending on how many of you sneaky buggers decide to play this build on League Start. Now, I've got 5 minutes to do this because the league is ending in 5 minutes. But we'll see if we can do this really quickly. So the rotation of how this goes is very basically, you've got Ramirez Banquet generating power charges on a non-critical strike. So you want to be able to hit many times per second without critting. So the way that you're going to be doing that is using a Stormbrand linked with Controlled Destruction. This is going to mean that your Stormbrand is going to have almost no crit. It has 1.48% crit. When you get to 5 power charges, that goes to around about 4% crit. So every, let's say 25 ticks of Stormbrand, you might lose your power charges through Ramirez, but most of the time you're going to have power charges up. So it's put a Stormbrand on the enemy, generate your power charges, discharge, and then Voll's Devotion is going to turn those power charges into endurance charges, then you generate your power charges back up, so you have a constant generation of 10 charges in total, 5 endurance and 5 power. Now there's also a new mechanic coming in 3.16 with Flame Surge. Flame Surge is going to be giving you, when you hit an enemy with Flame Surge, it creates a burning ground that deals damage equal to a percentage of that ignite if you hit an ignited enemy. So burning ground can be created every 2 seconds with a percentage of ignite damage on the enemy converted to burning ground. Now we don't know exactly how this works, but basically it's going to function something like this. It's going to give you quite a bit of a more multi, even just using a Flame Surge like this. If you discharge on the enemy, then wait just until you're ready to discharge again, which is 2 seconds. Right before you discharge again, you Flame Surge, then you discharge, and then that's going to give you anywhere, it used to say 50% more, 50% percentage, but they changed it, so it'll be, I'd say, between 30 and 60, they might even buff it right there. But basically, Flame Surge is a massive bonus to you. So I'm just going to jump into this dig map just to show you how this actually functions. Oh, thank you so much for the sub right there. I forgot to turn the alerts off. Because I am doing this live on stream, live twitch.tv/thisisbadger. Alright, so, as you can see here, I'm going to come to this boss. This is a tier 10 map on very budget gear right here. So what we do is we generate the power charges, you can see right there. I'm going to let it just tick for a little bit, so you can potentially see it maybe crit, and it just crit right there, meaning that we got our endurance charges, but you know what you can do? You can just discharge like that. Then what you're going to do is you're going to Flame Surge on the boss, and then you're just going to discharge again. Although this boss has so many different phases, And then the last thing that you're going to do on bosses as well is use your Wave of Conviction. You can see right here that it doesn't really matter, you know, about me getting perfect rotations off, because the damage is pretty nice on an extreme budget right here. But that's basically it. You just, you know, Stormbrand, Wave of Conviction, Flame Surge, Discharge, you know, Flame Surge again, Discharge, and that will be creating some burning ground. So on Flame Surge, you're going to probably want increased area of effect, you're probably going to want increased duration or efficacy, you probably want burning damage as well on there as well. But that's basically it. That should finish it off right there. There we go. Yeah, I probably should have showed that on a non-phased boss, but you really get an indication of how it does work right there. I'll just quickly show you what the clear looks like as well. You would have seen that in the intro as well, a little bit of the clear, but it's as simple as chucking Stormbrand on the enemies, then discharging, and then walking, finding some more enemies. I almost cleared this full map, but we'll see if we can find a couple here. It's just as simple as that, you know. As much move speed as you can get everywhere is obviously better, because then you can just move around more. And I like to use a Quartz Flask for phasing, so you can very easily jump into the middle of a pack before they destroy you, and then just discharge and destroy the entire pack just like that. So that's what it looks like when you're using Discharge, once you do have these two items, your Vol's Devotion and your Ramira's Banquet. That's pretty much it. We're going to get into the gears and links section now. First of all, once again, we're going to talk about the Armabrand setup as you're leveling. Then we're going to talk about the switch to Discharge, and then we're going to talk about the endgame Discharge as well. So, I will see you over there. Man, I love this build. Alright, into the juice of it. Today, we're going to be talking about the, well, first of all, the budget gear and links of the Discharger, or we'll say generic Ignite build into Discharge, and then we'll be talking about the endgame gear and links as well. Then we'll talk about the passive skill trees, and then how to level. I'm actually also going to recommend you have a look at Imexile's new leveling that he did for 3.15, but it will be very applicable to 3.16. You can also come and watch me on League Start. If you are going to play this on League Start, I'll be League Starting this build as well, so we can kind of do a League play-along if you want to, which will be pretty fun. But let's get into it. So very first, we're going to talk about the Armabrand gear, the setup that you're going to be using in Armabrand, and then we'll talk about the links as well that you'll be using. And I'll talk about when you want to switch to Discharge. So first of all, your Armabrand setup is extremely easy. All of your gear is literally life and resistances to begin with, because you don't really need much else. Let me just switch over here to our Flameblast so you can see the damage. And honestly, a Searing Touch early is all you need. And this can even go into the endgame. The only upgrade that I have found in the endgame, because crafting an Eventuality Rod is so difficult to do now, the only upgrade I found is a really well-rolled Cane of Kulamak. So Searing Touch is basically your item. However, you can also use a Martyr of Innocence if you're playing Armabrand. It actually has a little bit more damage. But the Searing Touch is still just, it's super budget, and Martyr of Innocence is going to be a lot more expensive. So honestly, get your hands on a Searing Touch. As I said, helmet, armor, gloves, boots, amulet, rings, belt, just life and resistances as much as you can. Try and get some chaos resistance around the place. What I will say is try and focus on armor gear, because we are going to be only really focusing on armor, elemental mitigation through the tree itself, and then also focusing on elemental reduction through the ascendancy of the Elementalist itself. If you can get your hands on an Aziri's Promise, it's always good, because it does increase your elemental damage as extra chaos for ignite damage right there. It's around about 11% damage increase. You're just going to want a Seething Divine Life Flask of Staunching, just for the instant recovery and the immunity to bleed. And then you're just going to want, you know, a Granite, Quicksilver. I also really like to use a Quartz Flask if possible, but I opened the last flask slot just for what you want. It's totally whatever you want right there. Now, the next stuff that we're going to be looking at is just the jewels, which are super easy. It's just increased life and some burning damage. If you can't get burning damage, get fire damage. Now, the tree itself in 3.16, we'll talk about that in a moment, but the tree is actually so stuffed full of fire.multi that it's actually worse to get fire.multi on your jewels now than it is to get just flat burning damage or increased fire damage. So that's all I'll really say on that. However, up the top here, we can switch to the Discharge gear set for the budget version, which I'll switch to right here. which honestly doesn't change much at all apart from your amulet and a ring. Now, your amulet is going to be a Vol's Devotion. Now, as I stated, it really depends on how many of you decide to play this on League Start. It really depends how expensive this thing's going to be, because it's not an easy amulet to find. In a trade league, you are going to be able to find one, or, you know, buy one from someone or anything like that, but it could get expensive depending on how many of you decide to play the build. And you're also going to want a Ramirez Banquet. Now, we did talk about the interaction in the section before this one. So if you want to go back, if you skip that one, go back and check the interaction between Ramirez Banquet. Basically, a TLDR, Ramirez Banquet with a Stormbrand and Control Destruction generates your power charges. When you discharge, you then get endurance charges, then you get power charges back, and that's the loop. Every time you discharge, put the Stormbrand on an enemy, blah, 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 keeps going. And that's it. That's basically the gear right there. Let's talk about the links, however, because things have changed a little bit. If you watched my previous Discharge build guide in Ritual, the build has changed a lot. And there's a lot to talk about there as well, especially Flame Surge. So, Armabrand leveling setup is super, super easy. You're just going to be using Armabrand, Immolate, Ignite, Prolif, and Swift Affliction. And your single target can just be a Flameblast or Voll Flameblast as well, with Cruelty, Swift Affliction, Immolate, and Burning Damage. And then if you do have a 6-link, if you're using a Tabula or something like that, you can use Efficacy at the end there as well. Now, the reason you use Immolate now is actually because the Ignite changes mean that you get a lot more damage through actually getting flat damage now instead of before. Basically, Ignite has changed from dealing 50% of your base damage over 4 seconds to 125% of your base damage over 4 seconds, meaning that stacking base damage is a lot better. Now, there is one thing I do need to mention. This Ignite DPS right here is not entirely accurate. It's relatively accurate, but not entirely accurate. The reason I say that is because it's basically simulating the extra damage you're going to be getting from Flame Surge, because Path of Building hasn't fully updated the less damage that Ignite gems are getting. So say, for example, Voll Flameblast, right here it says 90% more damage with elements for each stage and 100% more damage with elements for each stage on Voll Flameblast. That's a little bit less now coming into 3.16 because they're changing how the base scaling works. However, the Flame Surge, more damage is going to make up for that. So you can kind of consider the damage you're seeing here is relatively in the ballpark. Just don't take it as absolute gospel right now. As soon as I can update these PoBs with how Flame Surge functions and everything like that, I will. But right now, just take it with a small grain of salt that this is very much an indication of how the DPS is looking. All right, so that's the Armabrand setup right there. Same goes for Discharge right here. This says 30% less damage with ailments. Discharge is actually, I think, 50% less damage with ailments, maybe 55% less damage with ailments. However, that is also going to be buffed by your Flame Surge burning damage buff right there as well. So you can see around about, I would say, 1.5 to 2 million on the budget version of this build is how Discharge is going to function with you. We've got Discharge with burning damage, Ignite Prolif, Swift Affliction, Cruelty, and then Efficacy on the end there. And then our power charge generation is going to be in there with Malevolence, so Stormbrand, Control Destruction, Malevolence. We've then got our Wave of Conviction with our Curse, so Wave of Conviction, Combustion, Hex Touch, and Flammability. Our movement is going to be Flame Dash, Second Wind, Enduring Cry in there as well, and Increased Duration. And then we're going to be using Purity of Elements, Vitality, and Smite in the gloves there as well. Now, there's a couple of open links. We're also going to have a 5-link or maybe 4-link, depending on what you get in your body armor. Flame Surge with Efficacy, Burning Damage, Swift Affliction, and Increased Duration right there. And once again, the rotation is going to be Discharge, Flame Surge, Discharge. And once you do those three, then you're going to have the full boss damage uptime right there. So that is basically the budget setup. We're going to talk about the end game setup now. Let's jump to that. Terrible, weak clap, but here is the end game version. Now, you may remember my Ritual one of Discharge. If you did look at that video, that was absolutely insane gear, and this gear is not as powerful as that, mainly because I want this to be I guess the start of the end game. Around about a 15 to 20x investment, maybe a little bit more, but there's a lot of differences here that I will talk about as well. And this is for the people who really want to juice this build, and by golly, will I tell you that this is going to juice. I will tell you that. It's definitely going to juice. So we'll talk about the gear, then we'll talk about the links, shall we? Searing Touch basically can still carry you through the end game, but as I said before, in the budget area, you can use a Cane of Kulamak. Now, the Cane of Kulamak that you'll want to look for is a fire damage over time multi, increased fire damage, and then increased damage per endurance, or per power charge. It doesn't really matter because you're going to be having the same amount of endurances and power charges right there as well. The helmet you're going to be wanting to look for is a maximum power charge, and nearby enemies have fire res, Warlord, Praetor, Crown. Now, this is a little bit difficult to roll into. You can always just get the power charge or just get the fire res. It doesn't matter too much right there. But, you know, getting both is super, super nice on the helmet. Then the big endgame item right here is a Farrell's Fur. Now, Farrell's Fur basically turns your weird power charge generation into amazing power charge generation. What this Farrell's Fur is doing is meaning that you have, well, number one, you've got Cat's stealth, and aspect of the Cat has no reservation, but you gain up to your maximum number of frenzy and power charges when you gain Cat's stealth. So the whole rotation here is actually getting a Farrell's Fur, getting aspect of the Cat on any gear that has gem slots, and then socketing in Swift Affliction and less duration, meaning that your Cat stealth rotates through its aspect of the Cat rotations very quickly, meaning that you're always going to be at full power charges and full frenzy charges. Then when you discharge, you just got to wait for that to redo itself, and then you've got full endurance charges as well, meaning that in total you're going to have 6 power charges, 4 frenzy, 6 endurance charges, and you can scale that even further and further if you do decide to get some synthesized power or endurance charge rings here as well. Now, I know that was a little confusing. I'll go over that again when we go to the skills, but it's very important to remember how the aspect of the Cat rotation does work right there. But basically, it's auto generation of charges for you, just as long as you've got the right links and stuff on your gear. So speaking of the gloves themselves, you want some, well, these are really good endgame ones, but it's Warlord Hunter with fire damage over time multi and max frenzy on them, some life, and then aspect of the Cat crafted on at the end there as well, on some Apothecary gloves, which are damage over time gloves, right there. The boots themselves, you want max endurance charges on the boots, so you just want some Warlord boots with max endurance charge, and then you can just get some life and move speed on there as well. These can definitely be improved in the endgame. Vol's Devotion also is endgame. I also allocate Searing Heat on the endgame here as well, which on the tree, I'll just quickly give you a little bit of an indication. Searing Heat is this one over here. Ignites you, inflict deal damage 15% faster, because it's too much to travel over there. But we'll talk about the trees very soon. The rings themselves, they are actually getting a fire damage over time multi. I think it's Essence of Delirium. It's now coming in 3.16. You can now Essence of Delirium your Vermilion rings. So you just want to get a few Essence of Delirium. It doesn't actually need to be Warlord item. I don't know why they say Warlord item there. You don't need to have them Warlord influenced. You can just Essence of Delirium for the damage over time multi, and then you can get some res and some life on there as well. You are going to need some dexterity on some gear as well. Stygian Vise, you just want as much life as you can on the Vise, so you've just got max life, increased life, some chaos res. I decided to get move speed during any flask effect on there as well. Relatively easy to craft right here, and you can even increase this with Fertile Catalysts right here. Same with the Vermilion rings, you can increase these with Fertile Catalysts. And then you just want a Hypnotic Eye Jewel in there with some life, dexterity, and damage over time while wielding a two-handed weapon. Flasks, again, pretty much the same. You can swap in one of these flasks, or even put in the last slot here, you can put a, what's the flask called? My brain has gone completely blank. The Ignite Flask. Whatever it's called. The Cinder Swallow Urn, that's the one. Sorry about that, everyone. But Cinder Swallow Urn is also going to give you a little bit more, as well as some recovery right there. And then the jewels themselves, you're just looking at fire damage, max life, and burning damage. Once again, there's too much dot multi on the tree, which we'll talk about very soon, so you don't actually need dot multi on your jewels, even though they're getting buffed. And as you can see here, with everything up, you're hitting around 10 million Ignite DPS. This can be scaled to 15 to 20 million if you perfect your gear, but 10 million is kind of what you're going to be looking at the super endgame version of this build. I would say it's around about 15 to 20x investment, but it could be more, it could be less. We don't know how the market's going to actually work right here. So that's what I'll say right here. You're also probably noticing no cluster jewels. Cluster jewels are optional on this build, so if you want to put cluster jewels in, you can, but honestly, there's too much on the tree now with masteries and everything like that that I'm forgoing cluster jewels. I don't think I need them, which is crazy for an Ignite build, I know, but yeah. All right, the links. Let's talk about the links. So first of all, you're going to want Discharge right here. Discharge, obviously, the end game. Ignite Prolift, Cruelty, Swift Affliction, Awakened. Awakened burning damage there as well, and Efficacy. Then you're going to be moving on. Very simple Wave of Conviction setup of Wave of Conviction, Combustion, Hex Touch, and Flammability. Now, there is some things that you can do. You can even get, like, your Curse on your ring, meaning you don't need Hex Touch Flammability here, meaning you actually spare a little bit more, potentially for, like, a Cast When Damage Taken setup in here. But hey, we're on softcore. We don't need that, right? Movement is going to be Flame Dash, linked to Second Wind and Enduring Cry. Now, Malevolence is also going to sit here, but make sure that Malevolence is not linked to Second Wind. Otherwise, the damage, the more multi is going to be way too much. So just make sure that you got the 3 link right here, and then Malevolence solo over here. Then we're going to want our Purity of Elements and Vitality somewhere else. And Less Duration and Swift Affliction are going to be in the gloves here as well. Now remember, your Swift Affliction and Less Duration must be in your Aspect of the Cat gloves. Otherwise, the rotation is going to be stuffed up. If you do decide to put Aspect of the Cat on your boots or your helmet, make sure that you also switch your Less Duration and your Swift Affliction in those slots. So a little bit of gear and link juggling right there just to make sure that works. And then lastly, for the Flame Surge setup, we're still going to be experimenting with this on stream, but it's going to be something like Flame Surge, Efficacy, Burning Damage, Swift Affliction, Increased Duration. Still playing around with the 6th link there as well. But honestly, this is looking like what the setup is going to be. If it looks like we don't need Flame Surge for our single target, look, we always want more single target, but you can always have a really nice Cast When Damage Taken setup in there as well. But that's basically what the end game is going to be looking like for you. So let's move on to the passive skill trees. Time to talk about the passive skill tree, and I'm so excited to talk about the passive skill tree because it's a totally new passive skill tree with masteries. So we're going to go through all the masteries that we're going to be taking. Some of them are extremely juicy for the build, both for offense and defense. So let's talk about it. But first, we're going to talk about the Ascendancy itself, which is Elementalist, as we know. The order of the Ascendancies go like this. You want to be taking Shaper of Flames first from your normal Labyrinth, because Shaper of Flames is build enabling for this build. Then you're going to want to take Mastermind of Discord for the extra exposure once you've got Wave of Conviction. Now, I like to take Bastion of Elements 3rd and Heart of Destruction 4th, but you can switch that around. If you feel like you don't need the defense, take Heart of Destruction 3rd and then Bastion of Elements 4th. It's a lot easier to get our Uber Lab this league, so honestly, it doesn't matter too much which one you decide to do, but I like to take this 3rd just so I've got a little bit of that defense coming right into maps there, and then Heart of Destruction. But the tree itself, first of all, we're going to talk about the Arma Brand and Flameblast tree right here, which is going to be pretty simple like this. And this is going to be with masteries as well. So as we get to a mastery, I'll talk about the mastery. And the best way for leveling, honestly, I think is going to be taking the mastery points as soon as you can because they're very, very powerful. All right, so you're coming right out of here from Witch, just taking the intelligence for the quicker path, picking up Arcanist Dominion and Heart of Soul, coming right up here and picking up a little bit more life in Cruel Preparation. Now, the life mastery that we're going to want here is 10% increased max life and 10% reduced life recovery rate. However, if you do want, you could instead use the Vitality craft in here, the Vitality life one, which I think I've got over here. Vitality has increased mana reservation efficiency. If you feel like you need a little bit more a little bit more life recovery through the leveling process, you can take the Vitality here. And honestly, I probably would take that, so I'm going to switch that around. Let's switch that right about now, shall we? And we're going to put the increased life there and put the Vitality right over here. So let's do that. Then you're going to come up, you're going to get the Breath of Flames, and the Fire Mastery is going to be fire damage over time multi and negative fire res. Now, during leveling, this is going to be totally fine. We're going to be able to cap that res because we're going to be using Purity of Elements, which is going to be really, really tasty for the immunity and the extra element resistance right there. Then you're going to be coming through here, picking up Ellie Overload. Now, Ellie Overload is changing, but Discharge is going to have some good base crit anyway. So we're going to be picking up Ellie Overload. And also, Arma Brand before Discharge is going to be hitting a lot of times. It's going to be critting, so you don't need to worry too much about that. And then you're also going to be looking at this node right here, a new one, Acrimony, giving you 15 damage multi, 6 damage multi, and 6 damage multi, 27 damage multi right here, and then picking up 30% increased effective cruelty right here, which isn't calculated into the damage, and this is a massive damage bonus right here, so very, very nice. Then coming through here, picking up your Fire Mastery of Fire Exposure, inflicting an extra -5 to Fire Res with Holy Fire, and the burning damage multi right through here. Then we're going to be picking up plus 50 max life mastery with Purity of Flesh. We're going to be picking up Sovereignty with 15% increased mana reservation efficiency. Coming through here and picking up Divine Judgment. Now, you don't want to really pick up a mastery here because there's nothing that's that good. Potentially, the exposure you inflict applies at least 18%, but it's not really that good, so I've decided not to take one of the masteries here. We've got a Jewel Socket that we're taking right here. Then we're also going to be going into the Staff Masteries, you know, just as long as you've got a staff. This mastery is insane. Recover 2% of energy shield when you block spell damage while wielding a staff, and 2% of life when you block attack damage while wielding a staff right here as well. Now we're going to be taking Glancing Blows with 60 and 24 block and spell block. So 60% chance to recover 2% of life when you get hit. Very, very tasty, and then you get a lot of block through here as well. Then picking up the other life mastery, coming through here, picking up Holy Dominion and Discipline and Training. Coming right down here, we don't really need to pick up another life mastery or fire mastery here, but you can play around with them if you do want to. Picking up Tireless, Arsonists, coming down here into Barbarism, picking up a Jewel slot, and then coming right through here and picking up Heart of the Warrior and Warrior's Blood, and then lastly a bunch of defense at the end here. Now I love all of this. It's giving me, basically, this whole section right here is giving me +5 to Fire Res and +4 to Lightning and Cold maximum res, because this node right here, Prismatic Skin, it's giving +2 to Ellie res. We get +1 Cold, +1 Lightning, +1 Fire, +1 Fire from Barbarism, and then +1 all from Soul of Steel here as well. Then we're also picking up Corrupting Blood cannot be inflicted on you with the Resistance and Element Protection Mastery, picking up Unwavering Stance so we can't be stunned, then picking up 20% chance to defend with 200% of our armor, and then lastly picking up a last little bit of life right here. Oh, and you're also going to be picking up Call to Arms if you've got the last little levels through here. If you want to pick up Call to Arms and use Enduring Cry, you can just, you know, take off a little bit of life if you do want through here as well. That's basically the whole tree. Almost nothing changes when you switch to Discharge. You're just going to be losing a little bit of life, going to be picking up Call to Arms, and then you're also going to be picking up your Endurance, Overcharge, your Stamina, and your Instability here. So you have a total of 5 Endurance and 5 Power Charges, and that's going to be the budget tree. So yeah, that's basically it. The endgame tree is honestly exactly the same. You can use clusters if you want, but I'm actually not really going to include them because I actually think they're worse than the mastery tree itself right here. The only difference that I would say is potentially you're going to want to take Divine Judgment. It's a really, really big damage bonus, but you might want to lose a little bit of life for Divine Judgment there as well, depending on, you know, how your tree is looking. Potentially even losing these life and mana through here as well, because this node, honestly, pretty bad. So just like zooming straight up through here and then picking up all of this. All of the PoBs, once again, are included down below. Just make sure that you have the fork, the community fork path of building downloaded, because it is updated now, and updates will be happening to this as well once we start getting the new gems in and everything like that, so we can get a little bit more of an indication of how this is all functioning. That is basically it. Yeah, we're going to talk about the leveling next, and we're going to be talking about Imexile, because he has a really, really good leveling guide on YouTube, so we'll check that one out. So let's move to that. Alright, so we're going to talk about Imexile right here, because he actually just uploaded very recently. It is in 3.15, but it's pretty much how you're going to be leveling this character, and it is just the best way to level pretty much any Elementalist. And this is going to have almost no respecs here with my leveling tree, my leveling notes that I'll talk about as well in the PoB, because I've put some leveling notes in there. But this video, he does the story in 3 hours and 39 minutes. You're probably going to be a little bit slower, because I'm a ton slower. That being said, it's actually really good to watch someone like Imexile, who is an extremely fast racer, playing through the story like this, and picking up everything that you do need to pick up. all the rotations he talks about of, cremation, putting that on the bosses and everything like that, because you'll be using that to level. Armabrand, everything that you need to pick up. And you can see right here that he is muling a Scion. Now, the reason that you mule a Scion, so what muling is playing a Scion and just getting to the first town, because you want to pick up Onslaught, which you can't do on the Witch until you get much further in the story, and Onslaught's just going to mean that you just absolutely zoom through the story. So that's basically how this goes. I would very much recommend, sitting down with a cup of tea and watching through this. You will learn so much. I have learned so much watching this. Check it out. But in the PoB itself, I have a little bit of a leveling guide. Now, this was from someone in BPL, actually. I cannot remember the name, so I'm so sorry, but someone from BPL in one of the teams supplied this leveling guide, which is very, very, very similar to what Imexile. I think it might be exactly what Imexile is doing right here, but it has Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, and Act 4 Squama text. Thank you so much, Wifey, because someone is helping as we're doing this live. So thanks to Squama text. Alright, so it's got Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, and then Act 4 at the bottom here as well, taking Immolate and Ignite Prolift, having Arma Brand, Ignite Prolift, Immolate, and Combustion. But this has got how you level this, step by step, the links that you're going to need through all of this. Once you get to Act 4, you've got everything you need. Your 2 4 links, it's going to carry you all the way through. And then as you're doing that, you can follow my skill trees down here, all of the 20, 40, 60, 80, and 100 points right here. And this will really just get you zooming. Now, the last thing I will mention, I think I mentioned at the start of the video, but this is also great for any sort of generic Ignite build. If you want to try a different skill, obviously it's a little bit more risky, but you can, try out Incinerate. You can try other skills, and this tree is going to be really, really good for you, giving you a good balance between offense and defense. So that's all I really have to say. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this build guide. Let me know in the comments down below if you're going to be playing this build. Hit that sub button, and remember to give it a like and hit those notification bell right there as well, because, I like showing you my videos. I hope you like watching my videos. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, Badger is out.